Okay, so you just finished your design inspiration presentation and now it's time to start. But now that you've started your final vector poster, you're not really certain really where to start. You know, you have your document open, but you don't really know what to begin. And the best place to do that is by going back to your design inspiration that you just picked and seeing what we can find maybe to copy and to give us a good foundation by copying something that we already like and think that we can do. So when I go back to my design presentation, I see that I have these Nike shoes. So I figure I'm going to go ahead. I like the colors. I like the detail of the laces. I like the shapes. So maybe this is a good place for me to start in order to begin my poster. Maybe this isn't what the whole poster is going to be. Maybe I'm going to add to it later. Like maybe I'll add some clouds or whatever it may be to it. But I need to go ahead and understand the best place to start. And to do that, what we're going to do is simply find our image on our desktop. So if I look here, I don't see it. There it is. Move this up here. And once I find the image on my desktop, I'm just going to drag that into my Illustrator file. Now, just like in Photoshop, right, we're dealing with this idea of layers. So what I'm going to do is go to my layers panel here. And I'm going to lock this background layer. So what I'm going to do is just rename this original, so I know which one's my original. And then what I'm going to do is go down to where I have create new layer, and I'm going to add a new layer. So this is the layer that I'm going to do all of my tracing on. So now that we've copied all of our famous logos and we have a good idea of the pen tool, we're going to do something very similar with our shoes here. So to start, what I'm going to do is simply go and grab my pen tool. I want to make sure I'm selected on my layer 2, and then I'm going to go to properties. I'm going to turn my fill off, just like we always did. And then I'm going to turn my stroke to, well, let's see, I usually want to pick a color that I don't see. Now I might have to change my stroke color depending on where I am, just so I can see kind of what my outline's looking like, because this has a lot of colors on it. I'm going to pick, I think to start, maybe like this dark purple blue. Okay, now what we're going to do is simply start with our biggest shapes, and we're going to just work our way inward. Okay, so the biggest shape I see here is the outline of both of the shoes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just like we did with all of our other projects before, is use our, don't want to go there, use all of our skills of our pen tool, holding options, swing our handle around to then make a good copy of our outline. So you're going to use all those skills that we built over the last little bit using our pen tool to then make our vector poster here. Now this might take me a moment, but as I move my handles around, I'm able to slowly start tracing the outline of this shoe. Now again, remember, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time you go around, right? We just want to get close, because then we can always go back in with our direct selection tool to then make all of those changes later. Holding option, moving my handle around. And I might have to go back later to get myself a new point, but that's okay. Now if I zoom in, this might be a little bit easier to see some of the detail happening here. And I can always go back and just smooth and round some of these edges out a little bit later, just so it makes it look a little more realistic, like that soft tongue actually looks to feel. And notice how I'm just going over the general shape here. I'm not trying to be too worried yet, because I can always go back and fix it. So once I have my basic outline, let's see what happens when I turn that background layer off. And now I slowly am starting to have the pieces of the shoe coming together. Now once I have my outline, Then it's time to go ahead and I'm going to move to the next biggest shape. So now it's time to start working on all the shapes that make the shoe. So what I'm going to do is instead of just adding it to the same layer, I'm going to lock that layer. I'm going to call this outline. And then what I'm going to do is make a new layer, and I'm going to call this inside shapes, just so I know I'm working on the inside shapes. And that way I can organize kind of where all these parts are going. So that way if I start connecting them, then they don't, one, move, and two, that way I know when I look over here, if I need to make changes to maybe this red section, I know that it's going to be on my inside shapes. So I'm going to go back, grab my pen tool, and I'm going to keep working around. Now notice how the red kind of comes back. So I'm following the outline of the red. So I'm paying close attention to where that red outline is. So notice how I didn't keep going around the tongue. I'm following the outside area of the red. And again, if you zoom in, it's going to be easier. Now, the closer and more detailed you are the first time around, the easier it's going to be for you to clean it up, and the nicer it's going to look in the end. So now that I have this rough outline here, if I want, I can always go back with my direct selection tool and just change some of these handles to make it blend in a little bit more and have it look a little more realistic. Like notice how I missed this section. This section looks a little missed. So that's how I can go in after and really start cleaning that up. Now, once I have this section here and I have a big chunk, I'm ready to go ahead and add some color. So if I want to add this exact same red color, what I could do is just click my eyedropper tool and then click that red color, and then look how we now have this solid chunk of color. Now, if I turn off my background layer, notice how I start to have that section colored in. Now, if we missed a part, that's okay. We can always go back to our different layers. And what I can do is adjust the different properties. So if I want to make my outline a little bit bigger and maybe a little thicker, I can just click on that outline. And I can just make this stroke fill in just a little bit more just to help fill in some of those sections that I missed. So when I zoom out, we can see that this shoe is already starting to come together. We can see where the laces are going to start going and then the sole of the shoe.